record to the computer. Yeah, that should be fine.
All right. All right, shall we start?
Yes, so Paul, over to you. We can start.
All right. Can you see my screen or I don't think you can. Can you? I
Yeah,
mean,
we can see your screen.
Yes,
Yeah.
you should be able to share. Yeah.
okay, we can.
It's yeah, you are sharing that. Yes, it's visible
All
with the
right.
slide.
All right. Nice to meet you again for this second talk. This time I will leave reactive infrastructure and go to my official community builder topic, that is serverless. So as a serverless community builder, I had to have at some point to talk for the serverless community. Um, just to introduce a little bit of myself, um, I'm Paul Santos. I'm an independent AWS consultant. I've been an independent contractor since September 2023. And I've been a user of the AWS cloud for more than 9 years now. Um, I'm happy to live in Poitiers, where I lead a small user group. It's quite an effort to get this user group started, but and I'm also a dad for children. Um, so today I will discuss with you guys how to run PHP code on Lambda. Uh, Maybe first, you guys, what sort of community builders are you? What is your main topic? Are you more in containers? Are you more in what's your main subject matter?
I'm
Oh,
contain I'm container safe here, Paul.
all right. Storage and serverless, and then also a serverless champion here with Sebastian. Okay. And in the data domain, okay, and switching to security, that's great. So this is a presentation I gave to a user group. So there are some parts that are like 100 level. I may skip quite a bit of it because you guys are quite familiar with the cloud and mostly with the concepts of serverless. Okay. Uh, yeah. When again, serverless, what it is, it's moving. It's not actually there is not no server. It's just someone else's server. It's AWS servers, and the AWS manages not only the infrastructure, the hardware, and so on, but also the virtual machines and even the runtimes that run on these virtual machines. And that's what's happens when we use here those functions as a service. And that's exactly what we will discuss today. Uh, with serverless, the usual benefits of serverless are that we don't have any infrastructure to manage. It scales and it can scale. If you use serverless for microservices, you can have granular scalability, and you can also have scalability really based on the actual usage of your app, and all of this with a proportional costs. And really, to me, something can be called serverless when it can scale to zero. That's really my criteria here. Uh, if it can cost zero when not used, then I'm happy to call that serverless. Otherwise, I call that elastic or something else. And since it's managed VMs and managed runtimes, then AWS takes care of most of the security part as well, and we have less to worry on that part too. And just like any other AWS cloud stuff, it's API ready, so we can make any automation based on serverless services. There are quite often people know about serverless when they do compute, so they know about Fargate maybe, about Lambda sometime. But there are quite a few additional services in the serverless family. Compute, storage, authentication, databases, and a few weeks ago I would have said Aurora is not really serverless, but it's back to being serverless with the ability to scale to zero the Aurora clusters. And also there are many integration services that are serverless and where you pay based on the million of API calls and not per hour of usage. That's also my second criteria for calling something serverless. And to that regard, Aura-ish is like it's serverless-ish, let's say. The typical architecture that we'll have when hosting a web app with Lambda is this one. So we will host all the static content of the app in a S3 bucket here. And we have CloudFront serving this content to the users. And then we have some kind of sub endpoint like api.myapplication.com that connects to an API gateway. And this API gateway integrates with Lambda functions. And then we can use whatever database that we want in the back. And what's interesting is that there are already plenty of integrations that are available out of the box, included all the observability tooling like CloudWatch stuff. Yeah, I see your remark about the SQL database. I haven't seen the pricing model of that, and until I see it, I'm not calling it serverless. Um, so what's the relationship between serverless and microservices? Usually we often identify both concepts. We think, okay, if we have a Lambda, then we have some kind of function in the Lambda. That's not always the case, and you can have actually quite a high quantity of code within Lambda. With Lambda containers, you can even go to several hundred megabytes of payload of code content. At first, Lambda was designed, to just execute some small pieces of code, and more people are actually doing monolith within Lambda, which someone tagged as Lambda list, and I find the term yeah, perfectly coined for what we want to do. So you don't have to do microservices to play with serverless, and especially with Lambda. And at the end of the talk, I will share a link, and you will have a link to a podcast. It's in French by Sébastien Stormac. And you can actually hear about a company that's called Trezor. And Trezor, they host a full bank in serverless, and specifically, they use Lambda functions and PHP code using Bref. So let's go switch to that. I will not describe Lambda into the details. Just in the official Lambda presentation, Lambda says the runtimes that Lambda manages are Node, Java, Python.NET, Ruby, and more. And what's really important here is the and more section. And we will use that a lot. So what we have to just to keep in mind for this session is that when using Lambda, Lambda starts a full execution environment for every new concurrent request that is made to your app. One executor per concurrent event. And we are built by the number of milliseconds times gigabytes of RAM that we use, which for small Lambda, the smallest one, which is 128 megabytes, makes for nearly 165 hours of compute per dollar. So that's not too bad in terms of pricing. And Lambda scales. And how fast does it scale? And it scales faster than anything else. Um, sure, you have cold start with Lambda. Cold start is when Lambda needs to start a new execution environment to deliver on a request. But scaling with Lambda will always be faster than scaling with with containers. Here we have a graph where we show ECS and EKS containers on both Fargate and EC2, and we can see how fast we can scale if we send quite a number of requests at the service endpoint. And actually, Lambda is right here. Maybe you didn't notice it first, because like in a matter of less than 1 minute, you can scale to thousands of executions at a time. And then you've got to play with quotas, but yeah, it's basically limitless. When we have Lambda, we need to adapt the code of our application to work with Lambda. Lambda expects an application to have a handler function, and the handler function is what the function that the Lambda environment will call, and it will give to this handler function, it will pass an event and a context. The event basically is the payload of the call, and the context gives some useful information, such as, for instance, how much time do I have left in my Lambda, or how much memory is available in my Lambda, for example. So the context object is quite useful as well. And so when doing some basic Lambda functions, we have to play with these handler functions. But if you have a PHP application, you don't have a handler function. And that's why we have Bref. Bref, it's a custom runtime that you can use to execute PHP code on Lambda. Bref was created by Mathieu Napoli, a French guy, serverless hero, I think. And it's also has quite a nice community of maintainers. And the project is actively maintained and I would say marketed and advertised. And it's actually growing quite fast. In July, Mathieu published this chart here, and you can see that in July, Bref, sorry, was managing at least 40 billion invocations. And that's only those that the Bref team knows about. When you activate the Bref framework, you can decide to give some anonymous feedback to the Bref team, or you can decide not to do so. Maybe if you have some kind of compliance requirements that prevents you from doing that, you can disable that. But so that there are at least that many invocations, and it's growing like every month. Bref is able to execute quite nearly any workload that can run within the constraints of Lambda. So the constraints of Lambda, just as a reminder, you are constrained by the 15 minutes time period for any execution. You are constrained by the 10 gigabytes memory, and you are constrained also by the amount of code that you can load within Lambda. And for most applications, Bref is really acceptable. The only applications that won't work with Bref are the applications that really require real time on a very consistent pattern. So if you need like 10 milliseconds response time for 100% of your requests, then Bref is not adapted, because sometimes you will have a cold start, and cold starts with the Bref framework, they are about 230 milliseconds. So the Bref runtime itself starts in 230 milliseconds. Okay. You can provision some Lambda if you don't want to experience cold start. But if you want to be like totally safe, maybe it's not the right thing for you. Bref has two different runtimes that come with Lambda. First runtime, it's a PHP FPM runtime, and it's meant for web applications, for Symfony, Laravel apps, and so on. And what this runtime does is um, it will act as an intermediate between an API gateway. So it will take the events payload that the API gateway sends to Lambda, and it will convert that to fast CGI requests so that PHP FPM can execute those. So you can actually leave your whole code totally unmodified to do that. There is a second runtime that's called the event runtime. And then if you want to use this runtime, you need to write a handler function just as you would do in Python or Node. So you need to write a function that will take an event as the input. Okay. There's also, by the way, a third runtime that's used to execute console commands. Many PHP framework have this kind of bin/console kind of commands. Then you can use your Doctrine ORM, or you can warm up your cache or this kind of stuff. So three runtimes, and two main ones are the PHP FPM runtime and the event runtime for asynchronous stuff. So what do you need to do to actually run your application using Bref? Actually, not so much. First, we can, if we want to, and I will demo just after that, a Symfony demo app. So Symfony is a well-known PHP framework. It's the most appreciated, I believe. And it comes with a very nice demo app that demonstrates the capabilities of the framework. So you just use the Symfony CLI to create a new demo app here. And then maybe you use the Composer package manager to actually install Bref and install Bref/Symfony Bridge because we have a Symfony app here. Okay. And then we want our application not only to be able to receive requests from an API gateway, but we also want it to be able to process asynchronous messages. So we have a version of our function that will listen to SQS, and that will be able, and all the lambdas of our application will be able to post messages to SQS. Yes, Symfony has a framework for that that's called Messenger. It has a plugin that's called Messenger to do that. And so it has also an adapter for Bref to work well. And if you want to manage cache for your application, you can use DynamoDB. So you can import this library also to manage the cache in DynamoDB. All right, and then you just override the env file. I do that because I don't use environment files. I use Lambda environment variables, and I provide those in my Terraform code. And then, so I just do, yeah, the composer install. That's the same as npm install. And then I compile the assets of my function, and I will pre-warm the cache because in Lambda, only the /tmp folder is writable. So the /var/cache folder that Symfony uses for the cache, it's not writable. So, and we don't want to lose time during the runtime to warm the cache. So we pre-warm the cache here during the build time of our application. And then, yeah, The Bref site has quite a number of example using the serverless deployment framework. And actually, I'm more a Terraform guy. So I published a repository when you can have an example of this Symfony app deploy with Terraform, not with the serverless framework. Okay, now let's look at what it looks like in real life. So this is my demo app. So you can go to bref.terracloud.org and it's really like the fully working Symfony demo app. So I can access the backend of my app. I can edit a blog post. So I will just change that to hi community builders. Okay, I will save that. Okay, it's been edited. So right behind this application, I've got Aura serverless database for all the relational part because this application is relying on a relational schema. It's not relying on DynamoDB, but I really could use DynamoDB as well. And as you can see, the app is fully working here. And I'm not lying to you. The app is totally so if I look at my code here in my change log, I've got basically the steps I've explained. First, I create the demo app, then I require these dependencies. There is a little manipulation. So for the Symfony kernel, you need to replace the base kernel with the Bref kernel. And then I added some Terraform code to do that. I added support for Messenger, so for SQS, configure the logs, and yeah, the rest is just some tiny stuff for I use DynamoDB for session cache because I want to remain connected even if I'm not using the same execution environment for every request. So there is really no server running behind this PHP app, and really, as a serverless person, that really makes me happy. And so you can find this example. I've got a GitHub. Okay, I'm not signed in here. Let's do that quickly. Okay, so I've got a nice repo where you can get all the codes for that. So it's in my GitHub. Yeah. And this is the end of this presentation. Maybe you have some questions or uh, um, remarks or whatever. So first question by Sebastian. How do you handle the runtime when deploying? Is it using a layer? Is it running on an image? It's actually using a layer. Um, so I will log into my account here. No, 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 not that one. Oh no, it says. Let's refresh that. We'll get there. So, where is? I need to find my password manager. Here it is. I believe it's in there. So let's have a look at the Lambda. I've got quite a few here. So where PHP. Okay. So this Lambda here, it has a layer, and the layer on the Bref site, you can have for any region, you can find the layer, the ARN of the layer, and that's how I load the Bref framework here. And otherwise, then this is really my full application here. And running it as a layer makes it possible, when just like Python small functions to actually edit the code right here in the Lambda IDE. And I'm really happy about that. And does it work on the ARM64? That's a good question. I'm not sure, actually. What kind of compute do I use here? Where is that? Uh, General configuration. Code section on top. Yeah, thank you. I'm not using the Lambda console very often. Tick. So can you help me one more here? Okay, here I'm using x64, but actually, maybe we can make a test here. Just, change that, save. Oh yeah, no, it wants me to upload the code source, the source code again. I'll test that. I'll find the answer for you, and uh, I'll let you know after this meeting. All right. Any other question?
Not a question, but a remark, Paul, that it was not mentioned. But the main reason I start using Lambda lately is that supports the containers. So
Yeah,
that was really a nice thing that they have added. You have there already your container, so you can run it as a Lambda
yeah,
instead of running it in your Kubernetes as a function, as a service.
yeah,
Then you don't have the need to for a cluster or ECS or whatever. You can
yeah,
just run it as a Lambda.
yeah. How big are your containers and how fast do they start?
They take time. There is no like how to call it, like warm up time.
Yeah,
So it needs the time just to start, like seconds probably.
yeah. And Sebastian has looked up in the documentation and says, okay, we can use the ARM runtimes, which is great. I guess it uses a specific version because PHP maybe needs to be the PHP binaries need to be recompiled for ARM, but probably works. And yeah, but I really like Lambda. I really like containers. Running containers in Lambda, yeah, when you already have containers and it's more easier and so on. But with PHP, that means also having a web server. So you have to have your own web server and PHP FPM started in each container. So Bref has the PHP FPM as well, but I guess the web server part is completely removed because it knows that it's lying behind an API gateway. There are also another way to run PHP code, which is on Lambda, and it is how is it called? The web drive, not the web driver, maybe someone can see what I mean. See, Lambda Web Adapter. Yeah, the Lambda Web Adapter. It's another way to use basically anything that runs behind a web server on Lambda. And it's quite nice, but it only works for synchronous calls, like calls through an API gateway. What I really find nice with Bref is that you can also use Bref to run async lambdas. And since all these frameworks like Symfony, Laravel, they always have an asynchronous library, an asynchronous plugin a plugin to make asynchronous tasks work. I really find it nice that Matthew and the team managed to cover also the asynchronous part of the Lambda, and that also makes it with the event layer, event runtime. You can also basically use PHP to react to any events in your infrastructure. So any event bridge events, you can use PHP to process this with your PHP code. You can use Bref to process any event with your PHP code. All right. Any additional question or remark? All right. I will turn off the recording. Thank you very much for your participation. That was really nice to